Solomon Dryden eased his Dodge Charger into the parking lot behind Elmridge High, the late morning sun glinting off its polished surface. The building looked like any other high school in a small Texas town. Weathered red brick, a few flags fluttering lazily over the entrance, kids hanging around the gym doors, laughing or joking with friends. But Solomon's focus was narrow, fixed on one person, his son. 2 years had passed since his wife's death, and he had driven 8 hours from Temple just to be here. Flying would have been faster, yes, but the Charger was her favorite, and he still felt her presence with him on the open road. He adjusted the lines of his deep blue Marine uniform, boots shining to a mirror-like polish. Not for show, not for attention, because there were certain habits that gave him control, even in moments that demanded patience. From the glove compartment, he pulled an old photograph, his wife holding Tyron as a baby, a small tear on one corner. He slipped it carefully into the inside pocket of his jacket. "I promised you I wouldn't miss it," he whispered under his breath. The gym doors were already open, and inside, chaos and excitement blended into one familiar scent. Floor wax, popcorn, and the faint tang of excitement. Metal chairs rattled, programs crinkled, voices echoed. Parents in crisp shirts guided younger siblings, some children waved handmade signs, and a grandmother leaned heavily on her walker. Solomon handed his printed ticket to a volunteer, a man squinting at the paper through thick lenses, and was directed toward the third row on the left. As he walked toward his seat, he noticed the glances. Some parents did a double take, eyes lingering on his uniform, then quickly looking away. A woman gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile before whispering to the man beside her. Solomon didn't react. He had long since learned which looks carried judgment, which carried curiosity, and which carried respect. He sat. The chair was plastic, slightly wobbly, but it didn't matter. His attention went immediately to the stage, where banners hung proudly, Class of 2024 in silver letters. Students lined up at the far end, some fidgeting nervously, others beaming with pride. Somewhere in the middle was Tyron, tall and lanky, eyes the same as his mother's. Memories tugged at Solomon, the night he held his son for the first time. The quiet moments of awe and responsibility. The music began, pomp and circumstance. The crowd rose. Solomon stood as well, shoulders squared, arms at his sides. The anthem followed. Hands went to hearts. Solomon remained still. He didn't need to move. His posture, his presence was the salute. He thought of his wife again. How she would have cried through every note. Fussed with Tyron's tie 3 times before letting him leave the house, and smiled with pride he could still feel even in her absence. Then, the moment shattered. 2 uniformed men approached, walking with purpose. Harlan Security Services, black polos tucked into cargo pants, radios at their belts. One short and wide shaved head, eyes tight with authority. The other taller, lanky, chewing gum like he had somewhere better to be. "Excuse me, sir," the shorter one said quietly, leaning slightly toward Solomon. "We're going to need you to come with us." Solomon slowly turned his head. "Is there a problem?" "This section's for families of graduating seniors," the taller one said. Solomon pulled out his ticket again. "3rd row left side." "Family seating confirmed." The short guard didn't even glance at it. "We got told it's full." Solomon's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but calculation. "It was full when I sat down." "Who gave that order?" A few heads turned. People noticed now, quietly, some holding back phones, some leaning forward. The woman beside Solomon, pale-skinned and older, whispered, "Don't let them move you." He simply nodded. The guards tried to assert authority, adjusting radios, leaning closer, speaking with a mix of irritation and false calm. But before the situation escalated further, the gym door at the far end clicked open. 6 men entered. No uniforms, no badges, yet their presence filled the space. Their steps were measured, their shoulders squared, their eyes scanning. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Anyone paying attention could tell. They were SEALs, men who had seen worse than awkward security disputes. They took positions, separated slightly, blending in yet unmistakable in their control of the room. Solomon didn't need to turn to confirm who they were. He had led these men through firefights, dust, chaos, and survival. Now they were here, silent like sentinels. Is there a reason this man is being bothered? A voice cut through the tension. Calm. Controlled. Creed. Marston stepped forward. Tall, salt-and-pepper beard, fitted black coat over a gray shirt. The guards froze, caught off guard by authority they hadn't anticipated. Solomon stayed seated, still and steady. His gaze remained on the stage, but his mind raced. He understood what was about to happen. Power, real power, had arrived. Creed's presence alone, coupled with the 6 SEALs behind him, was enough to shift the balance. The energy in the gym changed. Teachers and parents leaned subtly, trying to understand what was unfolding. The 2 guards hovered, unsure, adjusting their radios, muttering into headsets. It wasn't their orders or badges holding sway anymore. It was experience, loyalty, and unspoken history. Solomon's focus didn't waver. The stage, the banners, the crowd, they blurred into the background. This was his son's moment, and nothing would take it away. Creed and the SEALs were a buffer, a silent shield, a reminder that actions carried weight far beyond words. The gym was no longer a simple high school auditorium. It had become a stage of respect, of legacy, of quiet authority. The guards didn't know it yet, but the room had shifted under them. They had been brought face to face with men who lived by different rules, where loyalty was life, and hesitation could cost everything. One wrong move now could not only embarrass them, it could change how the entire audience perceived them. Solomon's mind stayed steady. He didn't flinch. He didn't react outwardly. His focus remained on Tyron, waiting for the ceremony to continue, for his son to step forward, for life's smallest yet most meaningful moments to play out in real time. The SEALs remained silent, like statues built from years of discipline. The gym's usual noise, the scrape of chairs, the chatter, the distant laughter, dimmed into a backdrop. Respect, tension, and history now dictated the atmosphere. The standoff was subtle, yet powerful. No one moved. The 2 guards, sensing they were outmatched but unwilling to fully yield, shifted nervously. Parents whispered, students squirmed, but Solomon didn't react. He simply sat, a father in a chair, carrying decades of service, sacrifice, and quiet authority. Every breath he took, every micro-movement, spoke louder than confrontation or shouting could. The SEALs were more than backup. They were an unspoken guarantee, a reflection of Solomon's life and choices. Those watching felt it. Everyone present could sense the moment's gravity, and in that silence, the true weight of respect, loyalty, and parental love filled the gym, laying the foundation for the story that was about to unfold, one that would go far beyond a graduation ceremony, beyond applause, beyond ordinary life. The gym remained tense. Solomon Dryden stayed seated, his posture unwavering, like a statue carved from years of discipline. Around him, whispers rippled through the crowd, the murmur of people trying to make sense of the confrontation that had just unfolded. But Solomon's focus was narrow. His son, Tyron, somewhere in the middle of the lineup, completely unaware of the silent storm surrounding him. Creed Marston, his old comrade from Kandahar, stepped closer to the guards, calm and measured. His voice carried authority without shouting, each word deliberate. "You're embarrassing yourselves. You're one breath away from making this worse." Garvin, the shorter guard, exchanged a glance with Mally, the taller one. Their confidence was waning. Backup, real backup, was present in the form of men they hadn't expected. Creed wasn't just anyone. Solomon had saved his life years ago in a place where seconds meant survival. Garvin's hand twitched near his radio. Mally shifted uneasily, chewing gum with less confidence than before. "I don't care what your orders were," Creed continued, eyes locked on the 2 men. "You do not put your hands on that man. You do not tell him to move. You do not ask again." The silence that followed wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was respect, the kind earned over years of life-and-death decisions. Parents leaned forward, students stopped fidgeting, and the murmur of the crowd faded. Solomon's head tilted slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of Creed's presence. No words passed between them. None were necessary. They had faced worse than this together, and both knew it. Solomon's mind, though, began to drift, transported 15 years back to Kandahar. Late afternoon sunlight beat down like hammers on rust-colored sand. He, a gunnery sergeant, had just finished briefing his unit when the world exploded. A roadside IED flipped their lead Humvee, sending dirt, metal, and fear raining down. Gunfire erupted, coordinated, precise, merciless. Solomon didn't think. He reacted. He dove behind what remained of a doorframe, assessing the chaos. 6 men were down, trapped under the wreckage of a second vehicle. One was already crawling forward, dragging another by the vest, Creed. Just 3 months in country, with a bullet through his thigh. Solomon bolted, no hesitation, dodging bursts of gunfire, sliding into cover behind a blown axle. "You're bleeding!" he shouted, gripping Creed's vest. "You noticed?" Creed coughed, blood streaking his temple. Solomon didn't pause. He grabbed the straps of the downed Enrique Soto and, together with Creed, pulled him to safety. Ahead, a young SEAL, pinned under part of the engine block, called for help. Solomon braced, dug his foot deep into gravel, and lifted with every ounce of strength, freeing the man's leg. They fell back together, crawling toward a ridgeline as gunfire continued to crack overhead. Creed returned with Soto, 2 others followed, Lim and Horton. Faces blackened with ash, rifles ready, all 6 men alive. That day had cemented a truth Solomon never forgot. Loyalty wasn't about words. It was about action. You saved the men beside you, no matter the cost, and they returned the favor without hesitation. That principle was alive now in the gym, thousands of miles away from Afghanistan. Back in Elmridge High, Creed remained seated, eyes fixed on the guards who still hovered near Solomon. They were clueless, unaware that the people they confronted weren't ordinary civilians. They hadn't yet realized the silent strength surrounding Solomon. Soon, if they didn't back down, they would. Other SEALs arrived quietly, blending with the crowd but strategically positioned. Javier Meeks, Zachary Wells, and the remaining men sat or stood at calculated spots, subtle yet unmistakable in their presence. Solomon barely glanced at them. He didn't need to. Their loyalty, earned through shared battle and survival, was evident in every poised movement. The ceremony pressed on, names called, applause punctuating each moment. But the atmosphere had shifted. The parents who once clapped mechanically now leaned in, sensing something extraordinary. Students whispered, craning necks to catch glimpses of the unfolding standoff. Solomon's gaze remained fixed ahead, his mind filtering out everything except the stage and his son. Malley attempted to salvage authority. "Let's just back off, man," he said, voice cracking slightly. Garvin, stubborn and prideful, refused. He stepped closer, hand near his belt. "You think wearing that uniform makes you better than everybody else? This is a high school, man. Not your base," Solomon said. Calm, but firm, his words slicing through the tension like a blade. The gym fell silent. Every eye followed the interaction. Even Malley paused, the weight of Solomon's presence pressing down. Creed, seeing the guards hesitating, stepped forward, measured, intentional. "If you touch him, you'll answer to me." Garvin's jaw tightened. "Who the hell are you?" Creed didn't raise his voice. "The man whose life this one saved. You end this now." More SEALs rose from their positions, a silent display of unity and readiness. No formation, no cues, just instinct honed by years of combat and trust. The gym, once filled with noise and mundane celebration, now felt charged, as though the air itself recognized the gravity of the moment. Garvin finally stepped back. Not fully, but enough. His ego bruised, his authority diminished in the face of unspoken history, he followed the school staff's guidance toward the back exit. The crowd exhaled quietly. Parents who hadn't noticed Solomon before now understood that this man carried something rare, something commanding respect without raising his voice. Tyron, standing in the line of graduating seniors, had watched the entire exchange. His heart raced, not with fear but with awe. He had seen pieces of his father's past, fragments of service, stories half told, but now he understood in a way words could never convey. The men standing silently around Solomon weren't there for drama. They were there because they knew what loyalty and honor meant, and they had always had his father's back. As the ceremony resumed, the crowd's focus shifted subtly. The applause that had once punctuated each name now carried weight, deliberate and rhythmic. Tyron absorbed it all, recognizing the magnitude of what his father carried, not medals, not flags, but the unspoken trust and respect of men who had faced death beside him. Solomon remained seated, hands resting calmly on his lap, eyes fixed forward. The gym had changed. The noise, once a simple backdrop of applause and chatter, had transformed into something heavier, layered with the weight of what had just occurred. Solomon Dryden remained seated, perfectly still, a figure of calm determination. Around him, 6 Navy SEALs stood, not posturing, not calling attention to themselves. They simply existed, silent guardians whose presence amplified the gravity of the moment. Every eye in the room registered it, even if some didn't fully understand why. Parents clapped louder now, perhaps to compensate for the tension that had gripped the air earlier. Students whispered among themselves, glancing back at the trio of guards who had retreated to the rear, visibly shaken. But Solomon did not flinch. He had been through far worse than a couple of overconfident security personnel. He had stared down chaos, gunfire, and death, and he had survived, carrying with him a sense of poise and an understanding of what true strength looked like. For Solomon, this was never about intimidation or pride. He was a father here first, a man watching his son take a step into adulthood, and he intended to do it quietly, with dignity. The moment Tyron's name would be called, the room would shift again, not because of the ceremony, but because of what it symbolized, the culmination of years of patience, resilience, and unwavering integrity. The line of graduates moved forward, one name after another. Students fidgeted, whispered jokes, tried to enjoy the moment, but Tyron's mind was elsewhere. He kept stealing glances at his father, noticing the unwavering calm, the subtle steel in his posture, and the way the men around Solomon seemed to rise in silent, deliberate acknowledgement. Tyron realized in that moment that he had never truly comprehended the full weight his father carried. The medals, the old photographs, the folded flag, they were relics. Today they were alive, standing, breathing, watching over him. The announcer cleared her throat and called the next name. Tyron adjusted his gown, wiped his sweaty palms, and tried to slow his heartbeat. The girl ahead of him smiled nervously. "You ready?" she whispered. Tyron returned a faint grin. "More than you know." From across the gym, Solomon leaned slightly forward. His eyes never left the stage. He didn't clap for every student. He didn't have to. His focus was on the boy in the black robe with red and white honor cords, the boy who bore his mother's eyes, her quiet determination, her resilience. The moment approached. "Tyron Dryden," the announcer called. A beat of silence followed, half a second, maybe less, but it was enough for the gym to collectively inhale. Then the eruption. Claps, whistles, cheers, yet unlike any other. The rhythm was deliberate, coordinated. The 6 SEALs, still standing, raised their hands, applauding in perfect unison. Each clap was precise, powerful, not for show, but a gesture of respect, a salute without a salute. "We see you. We see your father. We honor both." Tyron crossed the stage slowly, each step measured, heart pounding not with nerves but with pride. Pride in himself, yes, but deeper still, pride in his father and the legacy he carried. He shook the principal's hand, received his diploma, and scanned the audience. His gaze found Solomon. No wave, no standing ovation. Just a small, meaningful smile, conveying more than words ever could. Tyron nodded once, understanding the weight behind it. He stepped off the stage, the applause still rolling, and felt a profound sense of connection to the man sitting calmly in the crowd. The remaining names continued to be called, but the atmosphere had irreversibly shifted. Students walked the stage differently now, carrying with them a quiet acknowledgement of what had transpired. Not viral drama, not spectacle, but real, genuine. a lesson in courage, composure, and silent strength. Outside the gym, the chaos of celebration awaited. Students hugged, phones flashed, balloons bobbed, laughter filled the lot. Yet Solomon didn't move immediately. He remained seated, absorbing the scene, watching his son navigate the aftermath of what had just occurred. Creed and the other SEALs stayed nearby, their presence understated yet formidable. When Solomon finally stood, stretching legs stiff from sitting, he felt the weight of the day, not as fatigue, but as fulfillment. Creed approached him, silent at first, just observing. "You okay?" he asked. Solomon nodded. "I've been through worse." "Yeah, but it shouldn't have happened," Creed said, voice low, carrying the concern of a man who had survived combat alongside Solomon. "It shouldn't have," Solomon agreed. Another SEAL, Javier Meeks, joined them. "We tried to stay low-key, but once that guy put his hand near his belt..." Solomon raised a hand gently. "You did what needed to be done." "That's enough." The men exchanged silent acknowledgement, letting the noise of the crowd wash over them. Solomon moved toward his son. Tyron, diploma in hand, gown half unzipped, paused near the flagpole. The chaos faded around him. When he saw his father approach, time slowed. "You okay?" Tyron asked instinctively. Solomon nodded. "You?" "I was ready to walk off that stage," Tyron admitted. "That's why you didn't," Solomon replied, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "Because you knew I could handle it, and because you handled your moment like a man. You didn't let anyone take it from you." Tyron looked up, awe and understanding mingling in his eyes. "Who were those guys?" Solomon glanced behind him. The 6 SEALs stood quietly near the exit. "Men I bled with. Men who know what loyalty means. Men who never forget." Tyron nodded slowly. "That was powerful. Necessary. Sometimes silence is louder than shouting," Solomon said. "And sometimes standing up without speaking says more than 1,000 words." A pause followed. Tyron grinned. "So, you gonna tell me those war stories now?" Solomon chuckled. "Some of them. You're old enough for the real parts now." They stood shoulder to shoulder, not just father and son, but 2 men connected by an unspoken bond forged through hardship, resilience, and unwavering honor. The SEALs outside exchanged nods of quiet respect before heading to their vehicles. Solomon and Tyron returned to the Dodge Charger, the same one his late wife had driven to parent-teacher meetings and weekend trips. Tyron's fingers traced a scratch near the handle. "She would have loved this day. She would have made you retake every photo until your smile looked perfect," he said softly. Solomon smiled. "She would have." Inside the car, Tyron turned to his father. "Why didn't you say anything to those guards?" Solomon tapped the steering wheel. "I didn't need to. True strength doesn't always require words or force. I choose my battles carefully." "But they disrespected you. And me," Tyron said. "Yes," Solomon replied. "And everyone saw it. But they also saw the truth. They saw loyalty. They saw men who would show up when it mattered. And you carried yourself with pride. That's what counts." Solomon reached into his jacket, pulling out the worn photo of Tyron as a baby, cradled by his mother. "I carried this through Kandahar, through losing your mom, and today. Not for strength, but to remind me what's worth protecting." Tyron's voice dropped. "You always knew who had your back?" "I didn't need to know. I just had faith." Real men don't vanish when things get uncomfortable. They show up and they stand. Tyron nodded, understanding the lesson in its entirety. "I want to be like that, like you." "You already are," Solomon said. "You walked that stage with pride. You didn't let anger steal your moment. You stayed grounded, even when everything around you tried to throw you off balance." The SEALs finished departing, the last traces of the day's tension fading into the early evening light. Solomon started the Charger. "Now we drive home." "You get to choose dinner?" "Waffle House," Tyron grinned. "Of course," Solomon laughed as they pulled out of the lot. The school faded behind them, but the memory of the gym, the courage, the loyalty, the lessons, would never fade. Tyron realized that day wasn't just about a diploma. It was about understanding what true manhood, honor, and silent strength really looked like. Some people shout to be seen. Others sit in silence and are never forgotten. Today, Tyron knew which path his father had chosen and the legacy he would carry forward.